Jamil, I know you were watching closely with your popcorn today, but did you hear anything surprising, any bombshells or new information?
Well, no bombshells, Emily. I think, we saw what we expected, which is obviously a huge attack, or I should say hack, really not an attack against the U.S. government, private sector companies exploiting the supply chain. But I think what was interesting was, Microsoft did make news supportive of data breach notification. I think the real concern for industry is how do we grapple with this new supply chain threat, which has been around for a long time, but it seems to be more aggressively being utilized by, in particular, the Russians, but not exclusively the Russians. A lot of other attackers using this route into our companies, into our government.
Talk to us about the Microsoft development. How significant is that?
Well, look, I think it's something that a lot of industry folks have been talking about for a while. We've seen the expansion of data breach notification laws in various states. And so what the companies don't want, even though they may not necessarily want large-scale data breach notification laws, they also don't want 50 state laws that go after them. And so they'd rather have one federal standard. So not a tremendously surprising development, but certainly a notable one.
Now, there's a lot about this attack, this hack, if you will, that we still don't know. What are you still wanting to find out?
Well, look, we know that the U.S. government, it sounds like the U.S. government's going to give very clear attribution. We know it's the Russians, but they're going to make it very clear and be very solid about that. But the real question is how widespread was this? How many different routes in was this attack against the U.S. government? It's hack against the U.S. government. I keep saying attack, but it wasn't an attack, to be clear. It appears to be espionage at this point. Part of the challenge here is we know that Microsoft was involved. We know that SolarWinds was involved. We know that Mimecast was involved. But it sounds like there may be a lot of other players involved in how the Russians got in and stayed in. It really highlights the need for us to come together, industry and government, to really work collaboratively to stop these kind of threats going forward.
Well, and it also highlights the vulnerability of the software supply chain at this very moment. I mean, can't we assume, we heard the CEO of SolarWinds, they're saying this is happening now as we speak. And what was, perhaps unique about this particular attack is just how patient these hackers were and how long they waited to deploy very sophisticated tactics.
You're exactly right, Emily. This idea that they would spend, months and months getting in and then establishing themselves and really creating persistence. I mean, that's the scariest thing I think about this hack is that not only did they use the supply chain to get in, but now that they're in, they've gotten deep in. They've used Active Directory, other capabilities to really establish a strong foothold. And now they're sort of like the wolves in the henhouse, but they look like hens. And so getting them out and doing that deep network surveillance, identifying the behaviors is going to be really hard. And that's why you've got to have industries working together, companies working together, and the government industry really collaborating and creating this collective defense capability that the Cyberspace Solarium Commission told us about last March.
So what's your sense of how much damage was done? And will we ever know how much damage was really done?
It's going to be hard to tell exactly the scope of damage. We know that they were deep in. We know that they saw, for example, source code from Microsoft. Whether they downloaded or modified it, we don't have any evidence of that yet. We know they got to that. And we know within the government, they had deep sustained access to email and information. Now, no evidence they've gotten to the classified networks or weapons systems, but being deep inside our classified networks across multiple agencies can reveal a lot about how an agency operates and what was sensitive to them at the time. Not classified, but sensitive. And so, we may never know the full scope of the damage. One thing I worry about, Emily, though, is the fact that they were in so deep suggests that they could later on, if they had similar access, actually take action or even threaten us with action. They haven't done that yet. That's when it may cross the line and really require a stiff response from the U.S. government.
So what should Congress be doing now? What should the Biden administration be doing now? Anything that they're not already doing?
Well, look, I think, one, we have to make it clear that we're going to push back. This wasn't a cyber attack. This wasn't an armed attack against our nation. It wasn't an act of war. It was significant espionage. But the Russians need to know if they start to cross that line and come close to even that line, threaten us with something more, disruption, deletion, disabling of our systems, that would cross the line. And they need to know we're going to push back and push back hard. So for right now, sanctions, closing embassies, kicking out intelligence officers, that's the right start now. Down the road, we need to make clear there are red lines. Don't come close to them because we will push back and we will punch back hard if need be.